When my daughter got married, I sat quietly in the shadows, hidden behind flowers, like I was an afterthought. Nobody knew that I was carrying a secret worth $33 million from my late husband's will. I stayed silent, I smiled, and I let them all believe I was just the aging widow they could ignore. Thank God I did. Because only days later, my son-in-law knocked on my door with a notary, a stack of papers, and the kind of smile that turns family into predators. That was the moment I realized silence had saved me. I'm Corinne Ellison, a mother, a widow, and a woman who almost lost everything to the man who married my daughter. But before I share my story with you, I want to know you are here with me. Just say listening in the comments or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. If my story touches you, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It helps me keep sharing and it reminds me that I'm not alone in this fight. When my daughter's wedding began, the late afternoon light in Charleston poured through the tall windows like liquid gold, bathing everything in elegance except me. My place card sent me to table 12, tucked behind an enormous floral arrangement, so high and lush it might as well have been a wall. From there, I saw nothing of the ceremony, directly only reflections in the great mirror at the far end of the hall. They'd hidden me in plain sight, politely exiled behind orchids and roses, as though erasing me from the narrative would make me harmless. I smiled. Let them think so. I watched my new son-in-law, Dorian Vale, circulate like a politician at a fundraiser. His smile was never one thing. It was a weapon with settings 1 megawatt grin for the wealthy donors of his future, a tempered courtesy for those with practical use, and flat indifference for anyone who could only take, not give. I've spent 70 years learning to read expressions, and I knew from the first glance this man measured everyone by profit margins. When he finally approached me during the cocktail hour, the crowd parted around him as though he carried his own spotlight. "Mrs. Ellison," he said, dazzling teeth perfectly on display, "isn't this magical? I hope you're bursting with pride." His tone implied performance, not affection. I kept my voice soft, sugar laced with vinegar. Oh, I'm practically vibrating with joy, though the view from here teaches me more than you'd think. He either missed the bite or chose to glide past it. Then came the real invitation. I was hoping we might spend some quality time, just you and me. Talk about family collaboration. I believe in handling things early while the timing is efficient. His words slid across the air like oil. Collaboration. Efficiency. Early. He was already laying the groundwork. I tilted my head, playing the harmless widow. How refreshing. Most people try that before the vows, but I do admire commitment to doing things out of order. His smile faltered a fraction of a second. That was all I needed. We agreed on dinner in Atlanta Tuesday at 7:30, a private place he promised good for meaningful conversations. As he drifted off to charm another guest, I checked the broken watch on my wrist. Howard's old timepiece, frozen at 2:17, a relic I never stopped wearing. To others, it was sentimental clutter. To me, it was a reminder that time was never really broken, only waiting for the right moment to resume. When the band struck up what should have been the father-daughter dance, they projected a photograph of Howard instead. Claire twirled in her lace gown, radiant, while the empty space beside her burned into me. My husband wasn't there to protect her, but he had left behind plans I hadn't yet revealed. $33 million in carefully hidden accounts, protected by layers of legal fortresses. My daughter thought she married a man who would take care of her. I stayed silent because I knew one day she'd need to see the truth with her own eyes. The night closed with a text on my phone confirming dinner in Atlanta. I stared at it, then at Claire's smiling face in her wedding portrait. If I wanted to protect her, I couldn't shield her with words. I'd need proof. And proof meant playing along, at least for now. The restaurant he chose was the kind of place that survives on intimidation. White-gloved servers glided silently, replacing plates between courses like stagehands in a theater. The wine list contained names longer than medical diagnoses. Even the water was pronounced with a European accent. Dorian thrived here. He leaned back in his tailored suit, a man entirely at home in a room built to impress. I arrived in a simple black dress, pearl earrings, nothing extravagant. I wanted to radiate steadiness, not wealth. He rose dramatically, kissed my cheek with feigned warmth, and ordered a vintage bottle whose cost could have fed a family of 4 for a month. Then, with a theatrical pause, he placed a manila folder on the table. This, he said, is just some paperwork. Protective measures. Things every responsible family arranges early. I opened the folder. Power of attorney. Comprehensive. Medical decision-making authority. Financial oversight, even residency rights. Every clause written in the language of care, but designed to strip away independence permanently. Just in case you ever feel overwhelmed, he said smoothly, swirling his wine as though he'd already won. Better to do these things early before anyone questions capacity. Capacity. The word tasted like poison. He was already thinking ahead to painting me as incompetent if I resisted. I feigned innocence. It's very thorough. You even brought a pen. I tapped the silver fountain pen gleaming on the folder. Then I tilted my head and asked, "Did you bring a notary as well?" For the first time, his performance cracked. His eyes narrowed just a flicker before he recovered. "Next time," he said, "it's more efficient that way." Efficiency again. Always efficiency. He wanted this locked down before I could breathe. I folded the papers carefully and set them aside. I do have a lawyer, you know. I'd feel more comfortable having her explain this in terms simple enough for my mind to grasp. His smile slipped only for a second, then returned too quickly. Of course. But truly, these things are best finalized without delay. Lawyers complicate simple family matters. Family matters. He meant control. He meant power. And he meant to take it from me while selling it as protection. I sipped my wine, smiled with deliberate calm, and said nothing more. At the end of the meal, he collected his folder with restrained impatience. By the time I returned home, my phone buzzed with a new message. Confirmed Thursday, 3 p.m. At your house. With notary. I closed my eyes and wrote in my notebook, "Install cameras. Call Rebecca." The game had shifted. He thought he was tightening the net. He didn't see the trap being built beneath his own feet. I hadn't opened the panel in the basement in years. The air down there held the smell of old paper and dust, and something else, faint masculine like Howard's cologne clinging to the tweed coat still hanging on the peg. I touched the buttons behind the shelf. Slowly, fingers hesitating over the familiar code, our wedding date reversed. The wall panel clicked open. The safe wasn't large, but it held everything. I opened it and took out the envelope marked with Howard's initials, followed by a sealed folder, a stack of investment records trust documents, and the thud of printed bank statements with figures that still stunned me even now. 33 million. My breath caught, not because of the amount, but because Howard had believed this day would come. The letter was written in his slanted hand, dated almost a year before his death. If you're reading this, someone's come with a notary. They'll say it's for your protection. It's not. I sat down right there on the basement step, reading by the dim light above the fuse box. The assets are locked in a protected trust, irrevocable. No power of attorney can touch them. Don't sign anything until you speak to Rebecca Cole, her card's inside. She'll know what to do. There's a contingency plan, and it begins with recording everything. Dorian is the threat. Do not underestimate him. Tucked inside the envelope was Rebecca's business card and a second note shorter. He'll come for the money. Make him show his hand. Love you always. H. My throat tightened. I pressed the envelope to my chest, then stood. Back upstairs, I called Rebecca. Her voice was clear and steady, her questions precise. I told her everything: the dinner, the documents, the scheduled visit. You cannot sign anything she said, but you can let him talk. By nightfall, I was in her Atlanta office. She wore gray slacks, black boots, and a blazer with the quiet authority of someone who dismantled men like Dorian before breakfast. She laid out the plan quickly. We'll prep recording devices hidden legal, audio, video. You'll bait him. Say just enough to let him believe he's winning. Rebecca made one more call before I left Agent Sarah Torres a federal contact. If Dorian's routing funds or coercing signatures, we want her looped in. This could stretch wider than one greedy son-in-law. That night, my living room became a stage. I installed 2 mini cameras, one behind the bookcase, another nestled above the mantel. A pen recorder slid discreetly into the ceramic vase on the coffee table, the same floral centerpiece from Claire's wedding, now repurposed. My phone's recorder would stay running, tucked under a cushion. The final touch, a set of blurred, intentionally suggestive bank statements hinting at a hidden account labeled under Howard's initials. A fabrication, but necessary. The trap needed bait. Standing in the room afterward, I looked at the clock on the wall, an old heirloom from my grandmother, and then at Howard's broken watch, still fastened on my wrist. One was frozen. The other had started ticking again. Tomorrow, I whispered. He walked straight into it. The knock came precisely at 3:00 p.m. Not a second early, not a second late. I glanced at the flower vase, then at the camera light blinking green behind the bookshelf. Everything was rolling. Dorian entered, first brisk, tailored, overconfident. Keisha Lowell followed behind, dressed in a dark pantsuit, her notary seal case clutched like a briefcase bomb. Dorian kissed my cheek without warmth and gestured to the folder. "Shall we get started?" I gestured toward the couch. "Of course. These old hands may need a little help holding the pen steady." Keisha sat up on the coffee table, flattening the folder. She began flipping through the documents: Power of Attorney Healthcare, Directive Living Trust Reassignment, every page engineered to cut me out. "Now," Dorian said smoothly, "before we begin, I wanted to make sure we've addressed all accounts." I tilted my head. Accounts Howard's. There may be residuals, side accounts, investments outside the trust. He smiled like a man already spending the money. "Oh," I said, feigning confusion. "I think there was something. He used to mention a separate account. Something offshore. I never touched it." He perked up, eyes sharp. "Do you know how much was in it?" I shrugged. "Maybe 7, 8 million. It had some odd code initials numbers. I wouldn't know how to access it." He leaned forward. "If it still exists, I could help you move it to something safer. Simplify the paperwork. Let me take that off your shoulders." Keisha clicked her pen. "Shall we begin signing?" I reached for the document, trembling fingers acting the part. I scrawled my name incorrectly. "Oh no," I gasped. "I've always had trouble writing under pressure." Dorian tried not to sigh. "That's all right, we can redo the page. Let's keep going." Just then my phone rang. I pressed speaker before I even checked who it was. Claire's voice came through light and unguarded. "Hey, Mom, just checking if everything's okay." Dorian's voice cut across hers. "If the accounts got that much, I recommend we use Moss Holdings. They're discreet. No red tape. We can move the funds within 24 hours, just sign today." "Silence," Dorian Claire said. He froze. My eyes never left his. "Claire?" he echoed. "You're on speaker." "You're talking about my father's money." Keisha looked up uneasy. I stayed perfectly still. "We're just reviewing options," I said. "Dorian's being very helpful." Claire didn't answer. The call ended without another word. "Let's continue," Dorian said after a beat voice stiff. "We don't have much time. Keisha's got another appointment at 4. I nodded and reached again for the pen, signing 2 pages, then stopping short of the 3rd. "My hand's cramping," I said. "I might need a break." Behind us, the clock on the wall struck 3 again. At that exact moment outside, a police siren whooped once brief, distant, but close enough to send a ripple across the room. Dorian's hand paused mid-gesture. Keisha glanced at the window. I set the pen down carefully. Maybe just a few minutes, I said. And inside the vase beside me, the red recording light blinked steadily, patient and hungry. Dorian shifted in his seat, fingers tapping the manila folder like a metronome of greed. Keisha adjusted her glasses' eyes, flitting between the documents and the clock. Claire had gone quiet after the call, but I could sense her unease somewhere just beyond the door or down the hall. The stage was still mine, but the pressure in the room was changing. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice to a confidential tone. If there were, say, 2 or 3 million in a separate account, somewhere not on the books, would there be a safe way to move it? His eyes flicked to mine. Just for a second. Then they darted to Keisha, who kept her head down. He cleared his throat. Of course. There are discrete structures for that. Trust me, I've worked with people in this situation before. Friends of Howard's, even. He paused, watching me. We could utilize an investment firm. Delaware-registered, fully legal, tax-shielded. Richard Moss is the guy. He handles complex transfers, no questions asked. I repeated the name in my head. Richard Moss. Rebecca would know it. So would Agent Torres. I kept my face unreadable and nodded slowly. Does he work through a bank? Not exactly, Dorian replied. He funnels funds through dormant shell entities, investment vehicles that never see the light of day. Everything looks clean by the time it hits the final account. Think of it like laundry, efficient and invisible. The front door opened. Claire stepped in, quietly, but the moment she heard the word invisible, her brow furrowed. She walked into the room with caution, glancing between us. I thought you said this was just paperwork stuff, she said. Dorian straightened, suddenly smooth. It is. I was just explaining ways to secure her future, protect what's hers, and yours. Claire looked at me. Who's Richard Moss? Dorian smiled too quickly. An attorney, a strategist, nothing shady. I pulled a blurry copy of the decoy statement from under the vase. This is what I found. Something Howard kept separate. He never told me the access codes. Dorian leaned forward. His hands trembled slightly as he took the sheet. This could be real. His pupils dilated. I can trace this. Moss can handle the redirect, no problem. Claire watched him. Her arms were folded tightly. Why are you so eager to move money we don't even know exists? Dorian exhaled, visibly annoyed. Because if we don't, it could be tied up in probate for years. You don't understand how this works. He turned to me again. And if you delay, if you get flagged as mentally incompetent, they could freeze everything. You don't want that. Trust me. I let his words hang in the air. Claire's eyes widened at the implication. She stepped slightly away from him. I could see her mind racing. I pressed a hand to my forehead, feigning weariness. Let me catch my breath. He turned to Keisha and whispered, 10 more minutes. We'll be done. I turned toward Claire and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, Get ready. You're about to see who he really is. The living room had become a trap dressed as a conversation. The light filtered through the curtains in pale slats. The air felt dense still. Dorian was growing more impatient, checking his watch every 30 seconds. Keisha, visibly uncomfortable now, fiddled with her clipboard and glanced toward the door. I leaned back slightly and adjusted the edge of the decoy statement. One more thing, I said, feigning hesitation. What if the account wasn't 2 or 3 million? What if it was 33? Dorian froze. The number hit like a bell. His whole posture changed. He leaned in, suddenly urgent. 33 million. I nodded slowly. He didn't even pretend to hide it anymore. That changes everything. We'd need to move fast. I can consolidate the assets into a trust under Claire's name. Then once the transfer's done, you'll have security. No taxes, no questions. Keisha raised an eyebrow. That would require additional documentation, legal review at minimum. Not if we structure it through Moss's firm, Dorian snapped. We'll be in and out by Monday. I reached behind the cushion and pressed the phone screen. The light blinked red. The lens on the mantel turned slightly, catching the left side of Dorian's face. His greed was now in high definition. Claire stepped fully into the room. "You said this was about helping my mother, but you're trying to take everything." Dorian turned too quickly. "No, I'm protecting her. All of us, we all benefit, you and me included." She stared. "Did you marry me for her money?" He opened his mouth, then just for a moment forgot his performance. "Because we needed that money, Claire, all of it. Do you have any idea what we could do with it?" Her expression collapsed. "Oh my God," he turned back to me. "Enough. Let's finish this now." "Ma'am," Keisha said softly, "if you're ready to sign," Dorian slammed the table. "Stamp it. She's clearly agreed. She's just slow. Get it done." Keisha reached for her seal, and then the front door burst open. Rebecca Cole stepped in, first followed by Agent Sarah Torres and 2 uniformed officers. "Keisha, put the seal down," Rebecca said, voice firm. "Ma'am, step away from the documents." Dorian stumbled backward. "What the hell is this?" Sarah pulled a badge from her coat. "Mr. Dunn, you're under investigation for financial coercion, fraudulent misrepresentation, and conspiracy to defraud a protected trust." One officer moved behind him. "You set me up," he hissed. "No," I replied calmly. "You set yourself up. I just let the tape run." Claire stood, frozen lips parted, unable to speak. "Hands behind your back," the officer ordered. Dorian thrashed once. "You'll regret this," he shouted as the cuffs snapped shut. I watched them lead him out. Keisha sat motionless, hands folded tightly. I turned to the window. The sun had shifted slightly. The house was quiet again. Inside the vase, the blinking light finally stilled, and outside, the sirens faded into the distance. The courtroom in Atlanta was colder than I expected. High ceilings, polished dark wood, and a reverent hush broken only by the shuffling of reporters, the click of cameras, and the occasional rustle of paper. I sat with my back straight, wearing the same navy suit I had worn to Howard's funeral. Pearl earrings, hair pinned tight. No longer the widow hiding behind a flower vase. To my left, Claire sat in the gallery, pale but resolute. She hadn't spoken to Dorian since the arrest. I hadn't asked her to. "Some things you have to decide for yourself," Agent Sarah Torres opened with clarity. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness is not just a case of financial coercion. It is a conspiracy rooted in greed, manipulation, and betrayal of trust, targeting the vulnerable and profiting off grief." She pressed a remote. The screen behind her lit up. The footage from my home played Dorian pacing, then seated, leaning in as he whispered to the notary, 10 more minutes. She won't remember a thing tomorrow. Gasps rippled through the room. Dorian looked down. Then Keisha was called. Her voice shook at first, but then steadied. He emailed me the paperwork weeks in advance. I thought it was odd. He said Mrs. Ellison was forgetful and needed help, but she never looked confused to me. Dorian's defense attorney rose. "Your Honor, if I may, we would like to submit a medical concern. Mrs. Ellison has had lapses in short-term memory." I stood. My voice was even. "That's a lie, and I have proof." Rebecca handed me the letter. I unfolded it carefully. The court clerk took a copy and handed it to the judge. This letter was written by my husband, Howard Ellison, 2 years before he passed. He knew what Dorian might attempt. He left instructions privately warning me to watch out for smiling sharks in tailored suits. Voila, the courtroom was silent. Then Rebecca took the floor. "We now submit Exhibit 17 emails between Dorian Dunn and Richard Moss, dated 6 weeks before the wedding. They outlined a plan to funnel inheritance money through shell companies. This isn't just coercion, it's elder fraud, and it's part of a larger criminal ring operating across state lines." Claire stared straight ahead, her hands clenched in her lap. Dorian tried one last time. I was protecting her. She didn't know what to do with that money. The judge banged the gavel. Order. When the sentencing was read, the courtroom was still again. For the crimes of financial coercion, elder fraud, and conspiracy to commit interstate wire fraud, This court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison." Dorian swayed. He sat back down as if the floor had dropped beneath him. I turned slightly and met Claire's eyes. She had lowered her head, but when she looked up again, her eyes no longer wavered. She was going to file for divorce. 2 autumns passed like lifetimes. I stood in the East Room of the White House beneath soft chandeliers and rows of seated guests. The president stood beside me. Cameras flashed. My hands were steady. She spoke with calm authority. "Today, we honor a woman who turned grief into action. Mrs. Ellison transformed personal tragedy into a national effort to protect our seniors. Through her advocacy, we've passed the Elder Protection Act and launched the Ellison Fund with bipartisan support." I accepted the Medal of Freedom and placed it gently in the box beside me. I was still wearing the navy suit, still wore the same pearl earrings. In the back row, I saw her. Patricia Vale, Dorian's mother. She looked older now, the haughtiness softened into something almost human. During the reception, she stepped forward. "I know what he did, but I was still his mother. Please, for the sake of our families." I held her gaze. "Forgiveness is the business of law and God." I chose justice. She didn't reply. Claire found me near the rose garden. Her hair was shorter now, her posture taller. "No more shadows. I filed for divorce the week he was sentenced," she said softly, "and I've started teaching financial literacy to women at the shelter." I squeezed her hand. That afternoon, we launched the Ellison Fund. It was Howard's legacy, but I shaped its mission. Federal support, multi-state partnerships, a hotline, legal aid, and training for prosecutors in all 50 states. Then the phone buzzed. It was Agent Torres. "He talked," she said. "Dorian just gave us a list, 12 more states, a whole network. You ready to keep fighting?" I looked out the window of the Roosevelt room toward the trees turning amber. I didn't come this far to stop now. In the evening, I stepped out into the garden alone. The air was cool and smelled faintly of apple leaves and chrysanthemums. Howard had left me money. Dorian had left me war, and now I had a mission. A widow can be a target, but she can also be a dragon, and dragons don't negotiate with thieves.